Welcome to Fireside Chat. My name is Sai. Last year, I decided to quit my job and I worked for that company for 5 years, and I just finished rolling over my traditional 401k and Roth 401k to my traditional IRA and Roth IRA. I'm going to share the 3 simple steps to complete the process and the pros and cons of moving money from one plan to another. I'm also going to go over what I had in my 401k and why I moved them over to my IRAs. Between 2016 to 2021, I was able to maximize my 401k contributions for 4 years from 2017 to 2021. The first year was just up to the employer match at about 6% of my gross income because I started my job in October and I was still working on fully funding my emergency fund. But let me tell you what a big difference it made just by maxing out my 401k during those 4 years. I had a Roth 401k and a traditional 401k. Roth 401k was where I contributed my money directly from my paychecks to the retirement account. Traditional 401k was where my employer match went, which was at 3% of my gross income from 2016 to 2020, and then 4% of my gross income in 2021. That was the year when my employer decided to raise the employer match from 3% to 4% for my 401k. I got paid every 2 weeks from that employer and put all of my personal contributions into the Roth 401k. In 2016, my personal contribution was about $700 because I started my job there in mid-October, so my 401k contributions didn't begin until early November. In 2017, I contributed $18,000 or about $692 every 2 weeks. In 2018, I contributed $18,500 or about $711 every 2 weeks. In 2019, I contributed $19,000 or about $730 every 2 weeks. In 2020 and 2021, I contributed $19,500 for each of those 2 years or $750 every 2 weeks. That's a total of $94,700 in total personal contribution to my Roth 401k in 5 years. In my traditional 401k, my employer contributed $305 in 2016, $2,828 in 2017, $4,053 in 2018, $5,110 in 2019, $5,450 in 2020, and then $7,313 in 2021. That's a total of $25,059 in free money I got from my employer over the course of 5 years in my traditional 401k. I also contributed some money through the employee after-tax contribution that moved money from 401k to IRA, also known as the Mega Backdoor Roth strategy. You can check out the detailed video I did on the Mega Backdoor Roth, and I will link that video in the description below. So by the time I left my job in December 2021, I had about $162,000 in my Roth 401k and another $40,000 in my traditional 401k with dividends, earnings, and interest. 2018 was the only bad year I had with a negative 6% in total return that year, but 2017 was nearly 15% in return, 2019 was 22%, 2020 was 14%, and 2021 was almost 24%. The total earnings and interest were about 41% or 10.36% in annualized return. By the way, you can get your free fire resources like this spreadsheet by visiting firesidechat.com/contact. You can also check out the Fireside Chat shop, and I have all of my stuff on my bookshelf at firesidechat.com/shopping. So here are the 3 simple steps to roll over my 401k to IRAs. Keep in mind that this is not a conversion or a withdrawal. This was a direct rollover from traditional 401k to traditional IRA and Roth 401k to Roth IRA. Anytime you move money from traditional to Roth, then it becomes a taxable event, or also known as a conversion. In this video, I'm only talking about the direct rollover. The first step was to leave my job and wait about 45 days after leaving my job to initiate a rollover. At least that was the rule with my previous employer. During the waiting period, I would make sure to open a traditional IRA and a Roth IRA with any brokers. My 401k was with Vanguard and I already had IRAs with the same broker, so it was an easy process to initiate a rollover. You don't have to have the same broker to roll over your 401k to IRAs. You can move money from Fidelity to Vanguard or Vanguard to Schwab or Schwab to Fidelity. However, it would be easier to keep both traditional IRA and Roth IRA with the same broker. The second step was to fill out my direct rollover paperwork with my previous employer. Most of the time, your employer should give you 401k forms during your exit interview. I'm going to show you the rollover form from Charles Schwab, for example. So the form will ask for your basic information like your social security number and your retirement plan numbers. Since this is a direct rollover from 401k, I select the box where it says 401k. If you have 403b or 457, then you will select a different box. The following boxes are NA because this is if I'm returning any qualified distributions back into my retirement plan. The next one is to fill out the dollar amount. So for my pre-tax dollars, which was my traditional 401k, and add up my after-tax contributions and earnings in my Roth 401k. If you're not sure how to fill this one out and have questions about this, you can schedule a 20-minute financial coaching session by visiting firesidechat.com/coaching. The other thing you want to make sure is that you select a direct rollover. If you choose conversion from traditional 401k to Roth 401k, then you're going to owe taxes on the conversion depending on your tax bracket. So make sure to consult with your CPA if you're doing a conversion. I would also recommend you do the direct rollover from broker to broker. If you decide to have the 401k broker send you a check, then you want to keep the 60-day rule in mind. As soon as you receive the check from your 401k, you need to send the check directly to the IRA custodian. So for example, if you get the check from Vanguard 401k and your IRA is with Fidelity, you need to mail the check directly to Fidelity. If you don't do this within 60 days, then the IRS will treat this as a distribution and tax the heck out of you on your next tax return. It's always easier to just do a direct rollover. Once you're done filling out the form, just submit it to your broker and then it should be processed in whatever business days they need. Now you wait for the balance to show up in your traditional IRA and Roth IRA. The final step is to start investing in your IRAs. And keep in mind that many 401ks have their own mutual funds that you don't have access to in your IRAs. For my 401k, they liquidated my mutual funds and then moved the money to my IRAs. However, if you're investing in a generic mutual fund like the Target Retirement Fund, then you don't have to liquidate it and instead just move it directly from 401k to IRA. The same thing applies to those who did the self-directed brokerage inside your 401k. So many of you might be wondering why I've moved money from my 401k to IRAs. I could have left all $200,000 in my 401k and let it grow until I turned 59 and a half, right? So that was an option, yes. But because I'm a nerd and I like to make my own investment options, IRA was the right or correct route for my money to grow even more. Let me go over the pros and cons. And first, let me explain why I roll over my 401k to an IRA. The problem I had with my 401k was the high maintenance fees. The 401k plan charged me about $70 just in the annual maintenance fee and another 1.1% in expense ratio. So what that means is that for the $200,000 I had invested, the plan was charging me $2,200 a year just to own their select mutual funds. In my IRA, I could invest that money in an index fund with a 0.04% expense ratio, which would only cost about $80 a year. That's a huge difference when it comes to total annualized returns. With the IRA, there are no account fees, high expense ratios, and provided wider investment options like individual stocks, bonds, ETFs, and index funds. And that $2,000 I save every year just from maintenance fees and the expense ratio, it could turn into $244,000 in 30 years with 8% average annual return. The downside of rolling over your 401k to an IRA is if you work for a company that paid you in company stock, you would most likely have to roll it over to a taxable brokerage account instead of an IRA, so make sure you talk to a tax consultant before you do that. And the other downside is you lose the rule of 55 if you no longer have the 401k. The rule of 55 is when you leave the job in or after the year you turn 55, you can actually withdraw from your 401k without the 10% penalty. If you're close to the early retirement age, you should map out your retirement plan and find out if it makes sense for you to roll over your 401k to an IRA. So with that said, I appreciate you watching my video. Don't forget to subscribe and I hope to see you in the next video. Have a good one.